All right, guys, thanks for joining me today. All right, so let's talk about this conversation. We're again having yet another conversation about an African country proposing to kick out European imperialists in their country. We've seen this play out, over the last few years with coups that have occurred in regions like Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, right? In the Sahel, where countries in the Sahel are rebelling and they're pushing back at France, European imperialists in their country. Now we have Senegal. Senegal is the newest country of the countries in the Sahel to now propose that French troops be kicked out of their country. They no longer want to have France in their country, in Dakar, in their borders. Senegal, in March of 2024, elected its youngest president, the youngest president in Africa ever, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, who was elected a week after he was released from prison to become Senegal's new president. This young man has proposed to bring change. He ran on change to his country. I want you to also pay attention to his prime minister, Ousmane Sonko, who was also in prison with him. They both were released, right? A week before Faye became president of Senegal. His prime minister, who is also his mentor, Ousmane Sonko, is proposing that all the French military base in Dakar, in their country, be closed. They want France out of them. Now, the question many of you might be asking is, how did France get its military base in Senegal? It came as a condition back when a lot of the once French colonies were looking to gain their independence. Evil France, as a condition for independence for these countries, proposed and gave them a condition that they all must sign what was called the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization. And in that pact, it had conditions. A few of those conditions were they had to pay money to France every year. 80% of the foreign reserves have to be deposited in French banks. And the condition was that these foreign reserves, if any of these countries wanted to borrow against it, they can borrow it or borrow or tap into those reserves at an interest rate assessed by France. Third, they have to agree, and they must agree, that France must have its military base in these countries. That's how they got to have bases in these countries, which is why when we've seen the pushback of military presence or French presence in Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, and now Senegal, this is as a result of that. Can you imagine a country who is supposedly independent, or countries who are independent, right? But they really aren't independent. France, wicked France, evil France, has had their foot on these African countries. They won't let them go. The reason why France right now has power, they have lights on. They can walk up and down the streets of Paris. Everyone can go on vacation over there. How nice. The reason why they have the lifestyle is as a result of these African countries funding their lifestyle. The reason why they can walk their pretty dogs in parks, have fancy fashion shows, have paved roads, and all of that has nothing to do with their country citizens generating any type of GDP growth in that country. It has had to do with African countries funding their lifestyle. France today has a life, and they're able to excel and able to live and have the success they have as a result and at the backs of Africans in the Sahel. And then these same French people will snuff their noses at Africans and call their names when none of them can power or hold their country up if it weren't for these Africans in their countries. If it weren't for these smelly Africans, these ugly-looking Africans, these corrupt Africans, these no-good Africans, right? If it weren't for them, these so-called pretty white people in France, right? Lazy white people in France will not have anything in their country if it weren't for these countries in Africa. So these countries in Africa are fighting back and say, you know what? Enough is enough. They're kicking away puppet presidents who have been doing the bidding for France for years. We saw that in the coups that have occurred. We've seen Niger drive out French troops in their country and giving them an ultimatum that you need to get out. And they've all gone. They're finally getting their independence. So now, Senegal, it's like it's our turn. I want you to take a look at this inspiring speech by Bassirou Faye, who is now Senegal's president. Take a listen to this powerful speech he gave. And I'll be right back.
It is high time for France to lift its knee off our neck and put an end to this unjust oppression. Centuries of misery, human trafficking, colonization, and neocolonization have caused immeasurable suffering. It's time to put an end to this cycle of oppression. It's high time for France to leave us alone. It's time for France to take a cue from its European neighbors and learn a valuable lesson in independence. Germany is the leading economic power in Europe, significantly surpassing France, which is ranked as the third or fourth largest economic power globally. Germany does not exploit any country, any colony. I can mention Italy, I can mention Spain, who had colonies before, but who do not exploit anyone, who do not interfere, who do not impose leaders in their former colonies. On what grounds does France believe it can continue to impose leaders on us and make choices on our behalf? This must come to an end. And the emerging Africa, the African youth, the African elites, and the African diaspora all stand united in saying no, it cannot continue any longer. France's hypocrisy is evident and pervasive in daily life. Let's examine the cases of Mali and Chad as prime examples of this hypocrisy. In Chad, where the constitutional process has been interrupted, France applauded and its president visited to officially consecrate the new king's coronation ceremony. In Mali, where it is not the constitutional process that has been interrupted, but the transition process, France has condemned and even packed up its things to say that it is leaving Mali. That's hypocrisy. It's the double standard. It is the double language that France employs in its dealings with Africa. During our questioning of Mr. Jean-Yves Le Drian regarding the situation in Ivory Coast and France's decision to allow a third term, he provided a clear explanation. He stated that while he accepted the third term for Ouattara, he refuses it for Belarus. He emphasized that France has condemned the situation in Belarus and has actively encouraged the European Union to do the same. Le Drian explains that in Belarus, millions protested, unlike Ivory Coast, where there were no mass demonstrations on the streets. This is how France deals with African issues. Personally, we expect absolutely nothing from France. We desire her to cease meddling in our matters so that the people of Senegal can exercise their freedom of choice rather than being influenced by France's selection of a candidate using the tactics we are aware of. We begin by targeting individuals, adorning them with the Legion of Honor or a similar knightly rank, enlisting them in Masonic lodges, and informing them to prepare themselves as they will be next in line. Even the hypothesis that Macky Sall may not succeed, we know who is being prepared by France. This must come to an end. It will not occur in this manner any longer. Let's be clear. We have absolutely nothing against the French people. In France, both political and citizen voices are rising to hold and express the same discourse as the one I am currently presenting to you. For example, the deputies, such as Mrs. Frédérique Dumas, who regularly speaks on the platform of the Assembly, who regularly writes to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, since she is a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, to raise this unfair behavior of France towards Africa, hold the same speech as us. The same Mr. Jean-Luc Mélenchon, Jean-Paul Lecoq, André Chassaigne, all deputies, hold the same discourse as us, and hundreds of other voices. The NGOs, like other non-profit organizations, are doing remarkable work in the same direction. We strongly urge France to listen to the voices that speak to it about our plan for a more collaborative, fairer, and sustainable partnership between Africa and France. It is crucial that we work together towards a future that is equitable, just, and environmentally conscious. If she listens, I believe we'll have beautiful days ahead in our collaboration together. If he doesn't know how to cut it, thinking he can continue to function like in the time of our grandfathers, this African youth no longer accepts it. France must make preparations for a definitive break and completely withdraw from Africa. Africa belongs to Africans, not France. She belongs to no one else, neither China, nor the United States, nor anyone else.
Africa belongs to Africans, not France. She belongs to no one else, not to the United States, not to France, not to China, no one. Let me echo that again. Africa belongs to Africans, not to Asia, not to Europe, not to the West. It belongs to Africans. What a powerful speech. What a powerful speech. Would you say he was wrong? Would anyone in their right mind say that that was wrong? I mean, who in Africa goes and claims the West and say, hey, the West is our country or our region? Who? Somebody tell me. Who in Africa goes to Asia and say Asia belongs to us? You won't find this from any of the migrants, immigrants, expats that are from Africa that live in any part of this world that will go there and say, hey, this place is all ours. We claim none of them. But you have the audacity of these places go to Africa and they want to claim it. They want to claim it as their own. And they do it at the nose of a gun pointed to us. They point the gun at us and tell us that we must be on our knees and submit to their demands. And it's our region. The same region. They shame us and tell us that we've corrupted, that we're not providing food for our own people, that we're doing things to destroy our own people. They shame us for this. Even while they have been the ones, their hands have been all over this whole thing, causing destabilization in our region. They shame us for this. And the moment we say, you know what? Guess what? We want you out so we can build and provide for our own people. They say, no, we're not. That Africa doesn't belong to you. Africa is everyone's playground. Can you imagine that? No. Africa belongs to Africans. Period. Doesn't belong to white people. Doesn't belong to Asian people. Doesn't belong to anybody else. It belongs to Black and Africans. It's a sentiment and it's a message that we need to drive out to everyone. That is the most powerful message I've ever heard, if I've heard one. That is the most powerful message. And the young Senegal president, I'm telling you, he's as inspiring to me as the young president in Burkina Faso. Because Africa is starting to really cry out. Our ancestors are crying out and saying, you know what? We've been in this position long enough. Enough is enough. And they're inspiring and raising up an army and a generation of very strong and brave men and women of African descent and in Africa to stand up and fight the good fight. As far as I'm concerned, what the president of Senegal is doing is a good fight. What the prime minister, his prime minister, who is championing, right, Ousmane Sonko, who is championing this proposal to have France out of their country, that is a righteous fight. That is a righteous fight. Leave us to build our continent. We've got every capability, every intelligence, every strength, every will, every determination to build for our own selves. You won't find Africans anywhere begging for anyone to help them out. You won't find it. Africans, wherever they go, they build for themselves. They don't whine about stuff. Africans don't play the victim thing. Africans don't play the whole gimme, gimme stuff. We don't. We go anywhere and we build for ourselves. And they know this about us. They know this about Africans, which is why you're not going to call an African a lazy person. That's not a name you give to Africans. Africans, wherever they go, an African will go to the desert and it will create a home in the desert. An African will go anywhere and will make a name for himself or herself. We don't need anyone to give us anything, which is why African, with all vigor and certainty, we know that we can kick people out and tell them you can leave. Don't worry about it. And no one in Africa is going to regret it. But guess what happens? The imperialists and the evil schemes, knowing fully well that when it comes to black people can survive without them. They will do the undermining, the infiltration, the sanctioning. You know, those cheating things they do. They won't play fair. You know, the things they do where I can sanction you, and then guess what? You can't also trade with any of my friends, any of these other people in the world. They do those things to cripple Africa. Because when it comes to mano a mano, where one European country goes against one African country, they can't stand. France today has a life because of these African countries. Think about it for a second. These African countries are the ones that are powering France. With all of their so-called population who like to walk around in their prettiness, in their glamour, in their loveliness. Those ones have a house, electricity, nice roads, paved roads, have the economy they have at the backs of these African countries who are taxed every year to fund their country. If it weren't for these African countries and the money levied against them every year that they pay into French banks, none of those so-called pretty white people in France can hold up the economy. None of them. You know, there used to be a time, I don't know about you, there used to be a time where you just let the citizens of a country build their country. You know, it's called GDP. You know, gross domestic product produced in that country is what determines the growth of a country. Where the citizens of a country, it used to be a time, I don't know, you know, maybe I'm just too old, where that's how you measured, you know, the growth of a country. So citizens of a country will contribute based on whatever they do in that country. Businesses, working, labor, whatever, contributes to a country. And that's how a country sustains. It used to be where a country could be self-sufficient based on the contribution of its citizens, right? But no, not what we're seeing with these European countries or these Western countries. No, those days are gone. No, those days are gone. Now we just got to go rob other countries because our citizens are too lazy. You know, we've had too many propaganda, you know, in our countries, like this country in the United States. The GDP is falling every year now because they've had too many propaganda over the years. But they told people, don't marry. It's taboo. You're bad all by yourself. You're good. You don't need a wife. You don't need a husband. You don't need that man. Don't worry about it. Women, you're all good. You're strong. Don't worry about it. And now no one is getting married. And now their GDP is falling apart. So they got to go to other countries and steal. So those days are gone. Where, you know, countries are developed based on their citizens. No, now is we got to go steal from people. Guess what? Not just anyone. We got to go to Africa. We're going to that continent that is no good. You know, the continent that there was a former president of the United States, Trump, that said that the continent is filled with shit old countries. Yeah, that same continent. We got to go there and steal from them because that's the only way we can survive. We are going to steal from them. I guess the only continent that is not going anywhere to steal anyone's resources to survive. Africa. The same shit old continent with shit old countries. It's the only one that's got enough food, to survive, and it's got the labor power. They're the only one that are not going anywhere to steal from anybody. You got Asia over there. Chinese folks, they're over there. They're overly populated in their own country. They're about to hit 2 billion people on the planet. They got economic turmoil. They're over there. France, they can't power their country without Africa. Without these Sahel countries, they're over there. United States, oh my God, the strongest and most powerful country on the earth. They've got the African program. And they're over there for the same reason. So those days are gone. And they will shit on Africa. They will spit at the faces of Africans and say, hey, why are you coming to our country? Right. How about let me ask you the same thing. Why are you in my country? Why are you in my country? And you've been there. Since I was born, since a lot of these people were born, you've been there. Why have you been in our country? Why have you been on our continent? If it's such a shithole place, why are you there? Why are you crying grapes when Senegal and many African countries tell you to leave their country? You see this whole, let me explain this whole thing to you. This whole so-called being there, which is a ploy, and we're there, to provide military support to Africa. That is the biggest lie you hear, at least with France. Not as any great. You can tell the reason why they're there is because of that condition they gave to their former French colonies before they got their independence. Why is the United States there? Why are they there? Because they've got military base over there. What is the purpose of that? Because they haven't served any good. They haven't helped to curb any insurrection in these places. If anything, there's been more insurrections in this area. Think about it for a second. We should call the hypocrisy, and we should call it a slap in the face of the United States that your so-called military presence in these countries has not done anything to curb the insurrection in those places. But it has created the insurrection. So how strong is your military might? Think about it for a second. You often hear the United States boast of their military strength, and they're so strong, and that's the reason why they went there, is we're going to help you to curb the insurgencies. But the insurgencies and these Islamic extremists have continued to rise and gain momentum at the presence of these U.S. bases and French bases over there. So how strong is your military? If you're there and these guys are gaining momentum, do you understand that? So it's already exposing their military capability. It's nothing. It's nothing. And these countries in the Sahel are finding out that these things are not helping them out. This is creating the insurgencies in their country. But of course, we know that they're not there for so-called helping to fight terrorism. No, they're there to loot the country of its resources. You see, I told you earlier on that France and the likes of the United States and England and many of these places, the economy is falling apart quickly because of all the propaganda they've said in their countries, because of all the policies they've passed in their countries that's affected their GDP growth. They can't help it anymore. So they got to go steal from other countries. And they got to use a ploy of so-called terrorism, combating terrorism, to do this. But the entire time, they're just sitting on their hands. They're sitting on their hands. And this Islamic terrorism and Islamic things are happening, and they're increasing. And in many cases, they're fueling this thing because it solidifies their presence there. Think about it for a second. You guys are smart. Come on, wake up. You're smart. If I go to your country with the disguise and the lie that I'm there to help you fight opposition, I'm in your country with that lie. Then while I'm in your country, oppositions are rising up all the time. Would it be in my interest for me to create it and ensure that it rises stronger and there's more opposition, so you can think that my presence there is affirmed? But the entire time, I'm not doing anything with the opposition. We're seeing people dying in the streets. In many cases, we're seeing new opposition sprung up. And the entire time, we have military bases, so-called military bases, U.S. military bases in these countries. And there's nothing they're doing about this. There's never been a time in the history of Africa where white imperialists or Western imperialists or European imperialists have ever fought Africans' battle. There's never been one. You tell me one. You tell me what country that it was so-called Western base or European base in that country and they helped to fight or curb any rising insurgency. You tell me one. I'm going to give you a couple. Rwanda was one. Remember what happened in Rwanda? In the 1994 genocide that happened in Rwanda, UN soldiers ran. They ran and left the Africans to die. There were 1 million Africans that were killed and slaughtered at the genocide in Rwanda. They ran. They didn't do nothing for it. Look what's going on in Sudan. Are they helping them to fight the battle in Sudan? Look what happened in Niger. Look what happened in Senegal. When Senegal had its uprising, when did they fight and help them out? When? When did they do this? For us to now say, you know what? Yeah, there's really a need for them. When has this happened? No. But what we've heard and seen over the years are the resources of Africa being stolen and siphoned off, where Africans are left in abject poverty. That we know. And so we know that there are reasons being there. Has nothing to do with so-called fighting terrorism. It has everything to do with stealing from Africa the resources, pennies on the dollar, planting puppets in that country, in those countries in the Sahel, planting them as puppets so they can rob their people. So Africa stays poor, while people in the United States and people in England and France walk around and eat their fancy chocolate, drink their nice cup of coffee, go to fashion shows, a paved road, the place is a tourist destination, and everyone looks at Paris and looks at this place and, oh, what a place, what a wonderful place to visit. While African children are dying every day because they don't have their resources to bring wealth to their country, while those resources are bringing wealth to these other places. So why wouldn't Senegal and their prime minister call for France to get out of their country? And I support that. I support that. Your presence here is not doing anything but causing problems. So why are you here? Why are you filling up space? Taking our resources. Why are you here? Your audacity that you find a foreign entity, go to another country, a sovereign country, and say, you know, we're going to plant our base here. How about we do a mutual exchange? How about you accept Senegal and Senegalese, their bases in your country? How about we do that? Then we can say, you know what? So good. It's all good. It's fair. No, it's fair. You got one there. We got one here. How about we accept that? No, they're not going to go for that. They're not going to go for that. They're going to be like, no, are you crazy? We got this. Oh, really? You got this? So what makes you think that our country doesn't have it? And so when you find the pushback, now there's a dictator over there. Oh, now there's a problem in Africa. Now there's all this mass campaign to demonize Africa. Anyone ruling or leading African people. You find the same talk against Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. They call him a dictator because the man dared to push back at Western imperialists, European imperialists, and say, you know what, let us do for our own people. And he dared to take care of his own people. You find the same thing against Niger. Now you're finding the same tone against Senegal. And I hope they close that military base in Dakar. I hope Senegal closes that. Because France is what you call a parasite. France, of all the colonialists, I got to put them as the worst. To still have their foot on the necks of these African countries and still for them to power their country. I got to call them the worst. And I'm so happy to see that the spirit of Africa is awakening in many African leaders. Young leaders are starting to take the mantle and say that's enough is enough. And more importantly, they're having the support of their people all over the world. Look at Senegal. Look at me here. Look at many people supporting what Senegal is doing, supporting what Ibrahim Traoré is doing, supporting what Niger is doing, supporting what Mali is doing. There are many countries that are rising up where their leaders are championing and echoing the hearts of the people. And the people are supporting them and saying that we back you. And this is a problem for these evil imperialists, colonialists, who think that we're just going to keep going with the same old, same old. Fix your country. Fix your country. Leave us alone. Africa is for Africans. Not for France, not for the Chinese, not for the Americans. Africa is for Africans. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Please like this video, share the content, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Det finns ingen annan där som kan stå här by my side, oh why. Sättet du rör på det får mig att dö för dig baby. För de här yardis, de vill ju bara dra ner oss. Men du är fett och vanlig. Och det jag lägger all min tid och jag vill ha dig. Du får mig känna safety.